Yeah, welcome back to the program Sports Business with Orufo Ezaga, and we're reaching you from Plus TV Africa. And so we're back, and this time we're going to give you the business side of things. You know, tennis or sports generally is a high capital intensive business. All right, we have just heard about the woes of tennis of the tennis players and their patrons face in Nigeria. So what can we do to ensure that we can, turn tennis into something that is self-sustaining? Right now, everybody's looking to government to invest in sports, to basically carry shoulder the burden of financing sports in Nigeria. But we need more than government. Government doesn't have that kind of money. We need private sector participation. And to get private sector participation, you've got to provide some sort of value. Value that ends up, giving, maybe promoting their brands, connecting them with fans as emotionally, as you can only do with sports. So, what is it that we can do in Nigeria to ensure that, government really won't. Government right now is basically focused on football and a few of the more popular sports like basketball and maybe athletics. Are we going to wait for government to somehow find money before we can then focus on tennis? That doesn't sound like a plan. All right. So exactly what do we need to do in the tennis community to ensure that we provide value for the private sector and eke out some funds from that direction? Segun, let's start with you. You've been in the space for a long time. So what do you think we need to do with tennis to make it attractive enough to get sponsorship and, maybe even broadcast interest from the private sector?
Yeah, looking at tennis from the angle of business, sometimes it's like trying to put the cart before the horse right now. We need to sow that seed first. When you sow a seed, then you expect harvest. We need to set up a structure that supports tennis. We do not have a structure that supports tennis. We do not have a proper developmental program that even makes our players and the sport marketable. I mean, you have tournaments, and the entire system has a problem. You want to do tournaments in Nigeria, and the coaches and a lot of parents, maybe like 70-80% of them, expect tournament organizer to provide accommodation, feeding, transportation, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, like before they come and play tournament. This doesn't happen anywhere in the world. Anyway, most decent tennis playing environments, you take your kid for tournament, you pay to enter for those tournaments. And like that, and because those tournaments are not too expensive to put together, they attract more players. They are able to have regular tournaments. Some of the issues we have in Nigeria is that in a whole year, a kid that plays tennis may not play more than 3 tournaments in a year.
Yeah.
While in other climes, some kids are playing like, in other locations, some kids are playing like 30-40 tournaments a year. Some play practically every week. When I was in the UK this last time, the kid whose parents hosted us, all through the summer holidays, played tournament like every week. The guy kept playing, except the week that he felt he was fatigued, he didn't play. That's how to develop tennis. So we have a system. So before I even begin to talk about the business side of tennis, to even see that tennis is in its proper pride of place within our system. Then the next phase is, how do we develop good players? The truth for me, any kid that I'm going to discover from a secondary school is already too late. I'm telling you, we're going to discover you playing tennis from a secondary school is late. For me, the discovering players must be at the level of junior primary. Age 3, 4, 5, that's it. If you've not started playing tennis at 9, 10, with the current state of things in the world, it's difficult to cope. And I can tell you that even in Nigeria, with all the epileptic tennis stuff that we have, our players in 10, 12 and under, some cases 14 and under, can compete in many parts, of Africa, North Africa, some parts of Europe. They can compete. The problem we have, for me, that I see is transitioning from that junior to intermediate where the kids are more pressured with, they're not pressured with junior work, they're pressured with SSC, pressured with all these school activities that the parents want to sit down and say, come. Look, face your books, this is your tennis. I don't understand, it may not feed you, then the child begins to lose interest. The child begins to lose interest because the child needs to face his or her books.
Yeah.
Then the child begins to lose form. Then coming back is difficult. And God bless you, the child gets into a Nigerian university. Tennis is dead. Because any Nigerian university, you are seen to be an unserious person if you are going to leave your books to go and play any sport. The system does not in any way support sports.
Okay, so
we have...
Yeah. So from what you're saying, we even have to win the cultural battle first.
God bless you.
You know,
that's it. That culture of, look, once you're getting to be a teenager, you're like 14, 15, you need to sit down and face your studies. So at that point, the kid doesn't come back because, I mean, even before then, you were barely struggling and trying to get things together. Then you now don't train for more than twice a month. And of course, that is lost. Then for those that choose to stay in there, where are the tournaments? For me, I feel that, like Mike said earlier, we need to have our own kind of mini high performance center. I have a kid that plays. My kid trains in the morning, 6 a.m. before going to school. He trains from 6 to 8:15, 8:30 every morning. There's a lot of sacrifice. We leave our house 5 a.m. to get to the club at about 6 a.m. He trains. Now, how many people can afford to do that? How many coaches can you get that can come out there early in this system? Then the quality of coaching is key. Do you have the access to those kind of coaches? Do you have access to those kind of ball hitters? And those kinds of things. Then does the father or mother even have the time? I tell people, I say, look, if you look at Akara's play in Australia Open, his father is by his side. Vereb, his father is by the stand. Sissipas, his father is there. How many fathers in Nigeria have that kind of time to sit down, or the more have time to sit down? Tennis is a complicated sport, and it's highly mental. If you don't get that kind of huge support, it's difficult to go really, really far. Okay. So that means one of the parents may have to sacrifice or mortgage his or her livelihood or business to ensure that the child plays well.
Yeah.
Because if they are going to be able to play at top level, even at that, it still does not guarantee success.
Okay, so Mike, tell me, we're looking at how to fund tennis. Government cannot do that by itself, right? How do we do it in such a way that we can get funding for our domestic tennis?
Well, it's through corporate sponsorship mostly. The problem with corporate sponsorship is the companies want to be sure that you're reaching the audience, the same audience that they are trying to reach, and media is the way forward. How many of our tournaments are being streamed live? How many do we have an interface with NTA? I've tried to go down that route to spark the imagination. Also, the success stories need to be publicized more. Those who've played for Nigeria in the past, how did they go about it? How did they get from youth level to competition at senior level? These are the stories that spark the imagination that the companies, the corporate organizations can then latch on to in terms of putting money behind it. Now, the other thing is the sponsorship. I think we had this conversation previously. It comes and goes. They might have the budget for 1 or 2 years, and then you go to them. They said, oh, we only had some money that time. We're not interested anymore. We don't have the funding. So tie them down to a 4-5 year, package of sponsorship. That's one thing. Now, the other thing you said about the schools, what happens here in the UK is that a lot of the tennis facilities are tied with schools. They're in the school grounds, so that during the daytime when the children are in school, adults can use them for lessons and what have you. Then in the evening, when the children break up from school, the children have an hour or two to use the facilities, so that you get what you call it, economies of scale by doing that.
Okay, so you make a valid point, and I think this is a problem for Nigerian tennis players. Segun, I don't know if you recall, I had a son who used to play tennis, and once he got to 10 and he went off to secondary school, that was the end of his tennis career. There was no tennis court in the school. Yeah, they had a football court and they had a football field, but there was no tennis. There was no tennis court. Same thing happened in the case of my own daughter. But Segun has been a lot more successful with his. If you get the elementary part of your tennis training right in Nigeria, What do you do with the intermediate level? Because virtually all schools don't have tennis courts.
Okay, so I'll just share my line of thought. The truth is, once you play junior tennis in Nigeria and you are clocking age 15, 16, seriously, any Nigerian university, you cannot excel. Your tennis is going to die once you get to a Nigerian university. It's clear. Just name the university. They don't have anything that makes you get better. You just be the best you can get in those universities is that you become the university's number one, best player in the school, and that's where you stay. You're not going to improve. You're not going to get tournaments. You're not going to get sponsorship. Time to train, of course, you won't even get the time. So for me, at that point, seriously, once you're clocking 15, going to 16, when you're running up in secondary school, for me, seriously, I think you just need to head out.
Okay, so
Shagun,
let me stop you. Sorry, Shagun, let me stop you there.
Can I also speak about that?
Hello, hang on, guys. Let me stop you there. And I have to apologize that I took you guys off track. Let's focus on the money, yeah?
On the money.
Because, okay, so like Mike has said, we need to provide value for corporate sponsorship because we really need the private sector to come on board. But is it just that? What about the private individuals that see some, like what the Nigerian Tennis Parents Association does? You guys organize your own tennis tournaments. You know, do you get sponsorship for your events? And if you don't get sponsorships, why don't you get sponsorship? Is it that the sponsors themselves can't see that it's good value to put their money behind sports the way you have in the West, for instance? And that question is for you, Segun.
Okay, so at the Tennis Players Parents Association, in fairness, we do get sponsorships. We've been lucky. At some point we got flour mills. Sometimes at some point we got DB food. Sometimes we got different brands that put some good money behind our programs, and we're still talking. So we're still talking. Of course, you need to manage them properly. And in the past, what I have seen is not that brands don't want to support tennis. What I observed, in fairness, over the years, is that tennis has been left in the hands of so many coaches, so-called coaches in quotes. And I'll give you an example. These are guys that are not trained to manage brand owners. They just know tennis. The fact that I know tennis, I coach tennis, doesn't mean that I can manage tennis. I'm not a tennis manager. I cannot manage tennis funds. I just know how to coach. But the coach guy now wants to organize tournaments. He wants to be tournament director. He wants to bring in the brands. He wants to do the marketing. So there's so many elements that are missing. So in our own organization now, we have some senior brand guys who are part of our organizations. We have top level managers part of our organizations. We have board members of different companies that are part of our body. So these guys are able to bring in their own expertise at different rates. We even have people that write proposals to ensure that we get sponsorship. You know, even at that, sometimes it doesn't work all the time, but at least we have a direction and we're able to do something. So for me, over the years, in fairness to the private sector, they brought money at different times and these monies were wasted. I know there was a tournament that was organized by one of the retired footballers, I think at the stadium or somewhere. The guy brought in money and the guys practically shared the money. I have it on good authority. Like, so they arranged for who was going to win the trophy. They just stage managed your tournament, and the winner was get like a 500K or something. When the guy won, they gave maybe 150. They shared the balance. And very funny stuff that happened, you know. And those kind of things, I don't know how far this has happened. So those sponsors never come back. I tell people, no sponsor is stupid. Every sponsor that puts down money for a tournament expect to see some value.
Yeah.
I cannot put down a 2 million naira and I come and see a tournament that's not worth 500K. I won't come back. If I put down a 2 million naira, for example, and I see a program that looks like I put 10.
Okay, okay, Mike. Let me come to you, Mike. Yeah, he's raised a very important point. Most of the people that are running the marketing of sports in Nigeria are totally unqualified to do this. As a matter of fact, you'll be shocked that across all sports, you hardly find tested marketing professionals in charge of things. And the marketing profession is one that sees, everything from the point of view of the customer. So these guys just go play tournaments, they get lucky with sponsorship every now and again, and they misuse the funds. How do we, and to your point about being on television, that's another way to look at it. How do we put the sport on television so that it becomes a popular sport? What do you think, based on your experience in the United Kingdom and your own local experience growing up in Nigeria, what do you think can still be done at this point to popularize tennis such that it can command some sort of sponsorship or television rights?
Okay, there are two aspects to that. What do the children, young people under 12, what do they look at? Is it on their phones? Yeah, then you have to try to approach them at that level. In terms of professionalism, we have marketing a professional body in Nigeria. Have we approached them? We have advertising. I mean, professionalism is key, because someone who hopefully has spent years to gain qualifications and become known in their field will not run away with funds. But if you're a tennis coach and that's what you know, and you are now being asked to do this aspect, that aspect, you might get overwhelmed, you might get tempted to just, people are not looking. But if the real professionals, like Segun said, in each field are brought in to handle their area of expertise, perhaps, things can link together. But I have two things I want to say. I've approached the NTA about getting a regular slot for tennis, youth tennis. It will cost some money. The other thing is, in terms of the university, can you still hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Hello? Okay, in terms of the universities, I don't think tennis should die there. African University Games was just held last year. The universities in Lagos, they had their tennis facilities revamped. I'm speaking to some of the sports directors in the universities in Lagos to see how we can help in terms of the coaching and inter-uni competitions. And also, you have a little ecosystem in every university. You have the staff school, primary and secondary, and then you have the university itself. As I said earlier, tennis coaching needs to be happening in the primary, secondary, and then the school team. I don't like the idea of us just begging to go to America to use what they've built. I've coached here in the UK for over 10 years now, and I've asked, how do the facilities get to the way they are? It's the old students associations. Where are they? We need to approach them. And we also need to continue to create the idea of a student athlete. Education and sport are not mutually exclusive. They should go hand in hand. I never planned to be a tennis coach. I did my first degree in Nigeria. I came here and worked. I did a postgraduate qualification. Tennis coaching, after 2 decades here, is something I then picked up. Yeah, so it shouldn't be like if you are doing sports, then you cannot be educated. What about Professor Sadiq Abdullahi? He played sports, and he's allowed his children to follow that same route, high achievement in sports as well as education.
Okay.
That's the way to go.
Yeah, thank you very much, gentlemen. Segun, can we just have a last word, a very brief one? Before I would like to summarize also what I think the takeaway should be from the program. But Segun, do you have a last word quickly, like a minute, 30 seconds?
Yeah, okay. For me, I think I'd like to know more of what Mike does and see how, if there's a place for synergy. I wouldn't mind sharing contacts. Let's see, we seem to have the same line of thought. Tennis basically is quite huge, and they've all do our little bits. I'm sure at some point it's going to crystallize into something really nice. But the thing that we see is a lot of sacrifice, a lot of cooperation, a lot of resilience, But there are so many kids in Nigeria that didn't want to play tennis. Interesting, the All-African University Games that was played, African University that was played, I think these videos that was played. Interesting, the boy that even won tennis, the topmost tennis player, actually trains with me at the Lagos Country Club. That's Karim, who's a standing player in the whole of the tournament. This guy I know personally, he's a massive talent. He just graduated with the first class in Unilag. But unfortunately, he still cannot play tennis.
His story needs to be publicized. People need to be inspired by him. If you get in first class, then you are not. Yeah, that's amazing.
Okay, guys. I think we have to bring this home now. The point is, talking to you guys today, I can see that there's a lot of work that needs to be done in the pipeline from the elementary stage to the elite levels of competition. We need to do a lot more work with schools to come to some sort of harmony between schooling and tennis practices. But like Segun has said, and for me that's the takeaway for this program, is the fact that if you want to really grow sports in this country, you've got to approach marketing professionals who know what they're doing to try and show you how you can build products that can be attractive to corporate Nigeria and can give value to corporate Nigeria, and that way you get their money to augment whatever you're getting in from the government. I'd like to close this session by putting up a slide of the impact of the Australian tennis tournament for 2024 and why government and all of us should take sports a lot more seriously. The Australian Open happens for a period of 2 weeks. Get this. Over the last 10 years, it has contributed $3.5 billion to the Victorian economy, that's Victoria in Melbourne economy. It has attracted fans, of over 1 million. For 2024 alone, it got fans for over $1 million fans to watch the tournament, each spending an average of about $308. Now, the full-time jobs generated during the 2024 Australian Open were like 2,351. 754 of those jobs going to accommodation, hotels, cafes, 354 going to trade services, and so on and so forth. Across the world, there were 558 million viewers that watched the Australian Open. And these sort of figures are what would have motivated the Australian government to invest in sports in the Melbourne and the Olympic parks. All right? These are the sorts of things I tell people. If you want government to invest in your sport in Nigeria, show government that you're doing something and people are following you, and the government would invest. All right? The government can't do everything. We need to come up with a PPP structure that can help us get sports where it ought to be. Thank you very much, Mike, for making this program.
My pleasure.
And thank you very much, Segun, for joining us today. Oh, well. Until we meet again next week, this is Orufo Ezaga saying, be productive, be good, and stay safe.